The orange mark should have been there. Marcus kept his eyes on the bare latch while the children clustered behind the painted safety line, their backpacks brushing against one another in the cold morning air. "Get them on the bus," Preston Vale said. "The route is already late," Dale Mercer added. Marcus did not move. The diesel engine idled with a low, uneven tremor, and the smell of exhaust settled beneath the sharper scent of wet pavement. Nia stood near the front of the line, one hand closed around her backpack strap, watching the adults speak as though her father were not there. Dale returned from the dispatch office carrying a white inspection sheet on a clipboard. He held it at chest level, displaying the company logo before offering it to anyone who asked. "Bus 27 passed inspection at 5:42 this morning," he said in the patient voice of a man explaining something obvious. There was no critical defect. Mr. Reed was called for a minor adjustment, and he exceeded the scope of the request. Marcus looked at the time written beside Dale's signature. The paper was too clean. No grease, no fingerprints, no crease from being carried around a dark bus yard. "You called me at 11:43 last night," Marcus said. Dale gave a small professional smile. "We call many vendors. You approved the work. I approved an assessment." Linda Price stepped forward in a charcoal coat, holding Marcus's repair invoice between two fingers. The red payment denied stamp cut across the list of repairs: rear emergency exit, seat restraints, exhaust intrusion. She spoke softly, almost kindly. "Mr. Reed, your company is not registered as an authorized emergency vendor. Without a purchase order, accounting cannot release payment. I'm sure you understand that procedures protect everyone." Behind her, two drivers exchanged a glance. One murmured that Marcus was trying to turn one overnight service call into a month's rent. The other looked at Marcus's worn coveralls and said nothing, but his eyes dropped to the frayed cuff of Marcus's military jacket before moving away. Preston heard the whisper and did not correct it. Instead, he placed a sympathetic hand over the top of the invoice. "No one is questioning your effort," he said. "But effort and authority are not the same thing." Nia's face tightened. Marcus saw it and folded the invoice before she could read every word stamped across it. He lowered himself until they were eye to eye. "Look at me," he said. She did. "We don't answer cruelty with cruelty. We keep the paper." Her chin trembled once, then steadied. Marcus stood and slipped the folded invoice into the inside pocket of his jacket. Preston's smile thinned. "Your daughter shouldn't have to watch you make this harder than it is." The bus yard seemed to grow quieter around them. Even the engine's vibration felt distant. Then Preston added, in the same measured tone, "After what happened to your wife, I understand why you hear danger in every mechanical noise. But grief is not a safety standard." Marcus's hand stopped over his pocket. For 1 second, Nia looked as if someone had struck the air out of her. Claire Whitmore, still standing beside Eli, turned fully toward Preston for the first time. She did not know Marcus. She did not know whether his repair had been authorized or whether his warnings were accurate. But she had watched him give up the chance to defend himself so his daughter would not have to carry the ugliness of the moment. "Was an emergency vendor requested?" Claire asked. Linda glanced at Preston before answering. "That depends on who had authority to make the request." Marcus slowly removed the invoice again. Under the morning light, Dale's signature remained visible beneath the red stamp. On the back of the folded paper, faint grooves crossed the surface where a second sheet had once rested against it. Marcus ran his thumb over the impressions. "Bus 27, 11:43 p.m. Emergency repair approved." Linda saw the marks. Her eyes dropped to the closed folder pressed against her ribs, and her fingers tightened around its edge. Dale had just said there had never been another document, but the paper in Marcus's hand carried the ghost of a copy someone had tried to make disappear. Marcus felt Linda's eyes follow his thumb across the faint impressions on the invoice, but before he could ask about the missing copy, a dry cough cut through the diesel rumble. Eli Whitmore stood beside bus 27 with one hand pressed to his chest. The boy tried to breathe quietly, as if making less noise might keep the adults from noticing, but each breath came shorter than the one before it. "Mom," he whispered. Claire turned at once. "Where's your inhaler?" "Front pocket." "Easy, sweetheart." Marcus was already moving. He did not look at Preston or ask permission. He guided Eli away from the open bus door, lowered his metal toolbox beside the painted safety line, and helped the boy sit where the cold morning air was clearer. The toolbox was hard and too low, so Marcus removed his faded military jacket, folded it twice, and placed it behind Eli's back. The jacket still held the faint smells of machine oil and laundry soap. Claire found the inhaler with shaking fingers. Marcus held out the last bottle of water from his service truck. "Small sip after the medicine," he said. "No rus." Claire searched his face, uncertain whether he was helping as a mechanic, a father, or simply the first adult who had noticed her son was frightened. "Thank you," she said. Marcus only nodded. Behind them, Preston checked his watch. "The nurse can handle this," he said in a calm, administrative tone. "Mr. Reed should remove his equipment so the route can resume." Dale gave a humorless laugh. "He'll inspect the air next and send us a bill for breathing." Marcus heard him. He did not answer. Nia came closer and slipped her hand into her father's grease-darkened fingers. "Dad, are we going to lose the garage?" she asked softly. The question landed harder than Preston's insult. In the glove compartment of Marcus's service truck sat an unopened rent notice with a red stripe across the envelope. He had promised Nia he would handle it before Friday. Now the payment for an entire night's work had been stamped away in front of her. Marcus squeezed her hand once. "Not your weight to carry," he said. Then Eli coughed again, and Marcus looked toward the rear of bus 27. The exhaust smell was faint outside, almost hidden beneath wet asphalt and idling engines, but it grew sharper near the last row of windows. Marcus took his red inspection light from the toolbox. "You were told to leave," Dale said. "I was told I wouldn't be paid," Marcus replied. "That's different from being told the children are safe." He stepped into the bus. No one applauded. Several parents were still watching Preston, waiting for the man in the expensive coat to decide whose version sounded official. Marcus moved down the aisle, pulling each seat belt until the latch clicked. 1, 2, 3. The small metal sounds traveled through the empty bus. At the 5th row, a buckle slipped loose without resistance. At the 7th, another failed to catch. Marcus opened his parts case and removed 2 replacement latches he had bought for another job. Dale appeared in the doorway. Those parts were not authorized. Marcus wiped the new latch with a clean shop cloth. Neither was a child hitting the aisle. He replaced the first buckle, then the second, recording each seat number in the margin of the denied invoice. The folded paper rested on the seat beside him, its red stamp facing upward. Nia watched from outside as her father used the same orange paint marker he always carried to place a narrow line on every part he had tested. She did not tell the other children what to do. She only studied the marks, committing the pattern to memory because it was one of the few pieces of her father's work no one could talk over. Claire remained beside Eli, but her attention shifted between her son's breathing and Marcus's hands. She still did not know whether Dale had formally authorized the repair. She did not know whether the invoice had been altered or whether Marcus's private markings followed district policy. But she saw him use his own parts after being denied payment. She saw him keep his voice low so the children would not become afraid. Most of all, she saw that he never once asked who she was. At the rear emergency door, Marcus raised the red light. Fresh black grease had been spread thickly across the latch, too fresh for a part supposedly inspected before dawn. He wiped a narrow section clean. Beneath it was a broken stripe of old orange paint. His own mark from the night before, placed there to show the repair was unfinished. Someone had not fixed the latch. Someone had covered the warning. Claire stepped closer as Marcus held the stained cloth beneath the light, and for the first time she understood that his quiet kindness had preserved more than a child's dignity. It had preserved the first physical proof that someone wanted the truth hidden. The strip of orange paint beneath the grease should have ended the argument, but instead it gave Preston Vale a new one. He put that mark there himself. He had access to the bus all night. This proves nothing. Dale Mercer spoke quickly, each sentence clipped and professional, while Marcus held the stained cloth under the red beam of his inspection light. The fresh grease shone almost blue against the blackened metal. Behind him, the rear door remained shut, its bent latch hidden inside the frame like a bad tooth no one wanted to touch. Claire kept one hand on Eli's shoulder. Her son's breathing had steadied, but she still did not move closer to Marcus. A private paint mark was not an official inspection seal. Marcus could have placed it at any time, and Preston's explanation, however convenient, was not impossible. Did anyone photograph the latch before Mr. Reed returned this morning? Claire asked. Dale folded his arms. There was no reason to. Was the grease applied during the inspection? Routine lubrication. By whom? The question left a small space in the diesel noise. Dale looked toward the dispatch office before answering. One of the yard technicians. Marcus lowered the cloth. Which one? Dale's smile stayed in place, but the skin beside his right eye tightened. Mr. Reed, you are no longer part of this process. Preston stepped between Marcus and the bus door, his polished shoes stopping inches from the oil-dark pavement. His voice remained mild, almost sympathetic. You have already frightened parents, delayed 2 routes, and entered a vehicle after being instructed to leave. We cannot allow a payment dispute to become a public safety spectacle. Marcus glanced toward the children. Several were watching him instead of the adults in suits. Nia stood beside her teacher, arms close to her body, trying to look smaller than she felt. Marcus put the stained cloth into a clear parts bag, sealed it, and wrote the time across the top with his orange marker. He did not argue about ownership of the mark. He did not ask Claire to believe him. Show me the inspection sheet for bus 31, he said. Dale's face barely changed. Why? Because you moved the children to it. Bus 31 passed. Then the paper should be easy to show. Linda Price held her folder tighter against her coat. Preston looked at the parents gathering near the painted line, then gave Dale a slight nod. Dale returned to the dispatch office and came back with a second white form. He placed it on the hood of bus 27 beside the first one, keeping one hand over the signature area. Both sheets carried the Vail Student Transit logo. Both listed Dale Mercer as the final inspector. Both showed the inspection time as 5:42 a.m. Nia leaned toward her father, but did not leave the teacher's side. Dad, she said quietly. They say the same time. Marcus nodded once. He did not praise her or turn her observation into an accusation. Instead, he asked Dale a question so simple that even the idling driver looked over. Which bus did you inspect first? Dale removed his hand from the paper. I supervised both inspections simultaneously. With 2 technicians? Correct. Marcus placed the pages side by side beneath the bus's amber warning light. The pale glow made every pen stroke visible. The same lowercase letter leaned backward in both forms. The same ink blot marked the box for emergency exits. In the notes section, the phrase latch operating normally contained the same missing letter on each page. Claire stepped closer, though her expression remained guarded. Were these filled out by the technicians? She asked. Prepared by them and certified by me, Dale replied. This happens every morning. We use standardized language to maintain consistency. It was a reasonable answer on the surface. Forms often repeated the same phrases. Supervisors often signed work performed by others. Claire knew that matching wording did not prove matching misconduct. But then Dale added, they were printed before dawn and completed during inspection. Marcus looked from the 2 sheets to the glass doors of the dispatch office. The interior lights had only come on after he arrived. Before dawn? He asked. Dale corrected himself too quickly. Prepared last night. Printed this morning. Preston reached for the forms. We have indulged this long enough. Marcus placed 2 fingers on the corner of the first sheet, not stopping Preston, only holding it flat long enough for Claire to photograph both times and signatures. The shutter sound from her phone was small, but Linda flinched as though something heavier had struck the metal hood. Claire stepped away and typed a short message. She did not identify herself. She only asked for the Eastbrook Yards electronic gate log and the original upload time for both inspection forms. While she waited, Marcus bent to check the lower hinge of bus 31. Nia watched the orange marker in his hand. "That door doesn't have your mark either," she said. Marcus looked up. The replacement bus had no orange line at the rear exit, and fresh black grease had been pressed into its latch in the same hurried way. Claire's phone vibrated. She read the reply once, then again. The forms claimed both buses were inspected at 5:42 a.m., but the first recorded entry through the locked yard gate was not until 5:57, and someone had already tried to delete 15 minutes from the security log. Claire kept the gate log message on her screen while the diesel engines idled around her, each one sending a faint vibration through the wet pavement. The forms claimed Bus 27 and Bus 31 had both been inspected at 5:42 a.m. The locked gate had not opened until 5:57. 15 impossible minutes sat between the paper and the truth. "That log can be wrong," Preston said. "Electronic systems drift." "Then preserve it," Claire replied. "There is nothing to preserve," Dale added. Marcus looked at the two buses, not at the men defending the forms. The children were still standing behind the white safety line, shoulders hunched beneath backpacks, watching adults argue over whether they should be afraid. Nia's eyes stayed on the bare emergency door latch of Bus 31. Marcus closed his toolbox and set it beside the curb. "We don't need the gate log to answer the next question," he said. Preston folded his hands in front of his coat. "And what question would that be?" Marcus pointed toward Bus 27. "Will the rear door open under a standard evacuation pull?" A low murmur moved through the parents. Dale shook his head with practiced patience. "We are not turning a school route into a roadside demonstration." 90 seconds, Marcus said. "Driver uses the normal release. No tools unless it fails." Preston glanced toward the phones already raised along the curb. Refusing a simple safety test would look worse than allowing one. His expression softened into the public smile printed on every company brochure. "Fine. We will settle this responsibly. One test, supervised by my staff, and then the children board the replacement bus." Marcus nodded. "Keep them behind the line." He asked the teacher to move Nia and the other students farther from the rear of Bus 27. He did not call his daughter forward or use her fear to strengthen his case. When Nia hesitated, he gave her the same small nod he used at crosswalks. She took Eli's hand and stepped back with the group. Dale climbed into the bus. "Normal release," Marcus reminded him. "I know how the door works." "Then open it." Dale pulled the red handle. The mechanism clicked, but the door moved less than 3 inches before stopping with a hard metallic knock. He reset the handle and tried again. The same sound struck through the bus, sharper this time. Conversations died along the curb. The hiss of the air brakes became suddenly loud. Dale pulled a third time using both hands. The rubber seal trembled, but the bent latch held. Marcus did not smile. He did not say he had warned them. He stepped forward, raised one palm so the driver would stop pulling, and shut off the engine before placing his red inspection light against the lower hinge. "Everyone stays clear," he said. Preston moved nearer. "It is a sticky latch. Maintenance can address it privately. Not after the door failed under load. Do not make people misunderstand a minor defect." Marcus opened his toolbox and removed the manual release bar designed for emergency service. He positioned it beneath the latch, applied steady pressure, and released the trapped mechanism without forcing the frame. The door swung outward with a deep scrape. A curved metal pin dropped against the floor and rolled in a slow circle before stopping near his boot. Fresh black grease coated its outer edge. Beneath the grease, a thin crescent of orange paint remained. Claire's hand lowered from her phone to the folder at her side. Dale stared at the pin. Preston's smile stayed in place, but his jaw tightened. "That paint could have come from anywhere," he said. Marcus crouched, photographed the pin where it lay, then photographed the VIN plate and the open door in the same frame. He placed the pin into a clean parts bag without touching the painted edge. "Maybe," he said, "that's why no one cleans it before an independent inspector sees it." He handed the sealed bag to Claire rather than waving it before the crowd. She accepted it carefully, still unwilling to treat a paint mark as final proof, but no longer willing to let company staff control the evidence. "No repairs," she told Dale. "No removal of footage. No alteration of the vehicle." Preston turned toward her. "You are a parent, Dr. Whitmore. This is not your authority." Claire looked at him for half a second too long. Then she stepped away and sent a message from a contact list Marcus could not see. Inside bus 27, an independent air monitor had been placed near the last row. Its display climbed once, paused, and released a single warning tone. Eli flinched at the sound, but Marcus had already moved between the boy and the open door. "You're okay," he said. "You're outside." The inspector stared at the rising number, then at the seat where Eli had been coughing. Claire's phone lit up with a reply carrying the Eastbrook District seal. "Evidence hold approved. All fleet records preserved." The failed door had proved Marcus was not inventing the danger, but the order on Claire's screen revealed that someone higher than the bus yard had just entered the fight. The district seal on Claire's phone changed the air around bus 27. Preston saw it, and for the first time that morning his attention left Marcus and settled fully on the woman in the gray coat. Who authorized that hold? Eastbrook did. Through whom? Claire locked the screen. Someone with access. The independent inspector sealed the bent latch inside an evidence container, then photographed the air monitor near the last row. Its warning had faded, but the highest reading remained stored in memory beside the time and vehicle number. Bus 27 was no longer simply delayed. It was grounded. By noon, Marcus was back at his garage beneath humming fluorescent lights, wiping rainwater from the concrete near the rolling door. The denied invoice lay unfolded on his workbench beside the orange paint marker and an overdue rent envelope he had not opened in front of Nia. The silence inside the garage felt different from the bus yard. No children, no raised phones, only the ticking of cooling metal and the distant rush of traffic beyond the glass. A black sedan stopped outside. The man who entered wore a tailored navy coat and carried a slim leather folder. He introduced himself as counsel for Vail Student Transit and placed a settlement agreement beside Marcus's invoice. Full payment. For the repairs? For the misunderstanding. There wasn't one. The lawyer's smile remained pleasant. The agreement offered Marcus the unpaid labor, the cost of his parts, late fees, and an additional sum large enough to cover several months of rent. In exchange, he would state that he had not identified a serious safety hazard, that the children's refusal to board had resulted from confusion, and that Vail Student Transit had acted responsibly throughout the incident. Nia sat at a small desk near the parts shelves, pretending to work through a math worksheet. Her pencil had stopped moving. Marcus read every line without changing expression. Then he took the orange marker and circled one phrase, the identified rear exit condition. He wrote bus 27's VIN beside it. "You said there was no condition," Marcus said. The lawyer closed his fingers over the edge of the folder. "This language is precautionary. It names the exact door. Mr. Reed, this offer keeps your business open." Marcus glanced toward the red-striped rent envelope, then toward Nia. For a moment, the only sound was the fluorescent ballast buzzing above them. He capped the marker and slid the agreement back. "Ground the unsafe buses first. Then we can discuss what you owe." The lawyer's jaw tightened before his professional smile returned. "You may not receive this opportunity again." Then it wasn't payment. After the sedan left, Claire entered through the open garage door carrying Marcus's folded military jacket and the sealed evidence receipt for the latch. Eli waited with a district aide in the car. Claire placed the jacket on the workbench, then removed a badge from inside her coat. The name beneath the Eastbrook seal read Dr. Claire Whitmore, Acting Superintendent. Marcus looked at the badge, then at her. "You could have said that at the yard. If I had, every document would have become cleaner before I saw it. And now I need to know whether your records are clean." She did not apologize for doubting him. Marcus respected that more than sympathy. He opened his service ledger and showed her the call time, the replacement latch numbers, the seats he had tested, and the note he had written about exhaust intrusion near the rear row. Claire photographed nothing until she matched the ledger against the parts receipt, Marcus's phone log, and the garage camera showing him loading equipment at 11:48 the night before. One record could be altered, for independent records were harder to explain away. Then Eastbrook's preliminary fleet review arrived on Claire's tablet. 3 additional buses carried inspection forms signed by Dale at identical times. Each form contained the same misspelled phrase. 2 vendors had been recoded as unauthorized after reporting brake or exit door concerns. 1 driver's complaint had disappeared from the district packet entirely. Marcus could have released everything immediately. The settlement offer, the copied forms, and the failed door were enough to humiliate Preston online before sunset. Instead, he asked Claire to inspect the remaining 7 buses before confronting anyone. "If we make this about what he did to me," Marcus said, "he'll call it a payment dispute. Make it about what they did to the records." Claire looked at him differently then, not because he had rescued Eli, but because he was refusing revenge when revenge would have been easy. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unfamiliar personal address contained a photograph of a carbon copy invoice. Dale's signature appeared at the bottom. Above it, in blue ink, were the words "Hold payment until renewal vote." The initials beside the note matched Preston Vale's. The sender was Linda Price. Before Claire could reply, another message arrived. "I kept the original because I knew they would blame me." Claire set the phone between Marcus's denied invoice and the settlement agreement. Outside, daylight was fading across the garage windows, turning their reflections dark. 1 hidden copy had now connected the unpaid repair, the false inspection times, the silenced vendors, and the upcoming contract vote. And the truth had become too large to survive another meeting behind a closed door. By 7 the next morning, the Eastbrook bus yard had been arranged to look less like a place under investigation and more like a company photo opportunity. A blue banner reading "Every child home safe" stretched across the maintenance bay.
Folding cher fait ta portable microphone.
Local reporters stood behind a rope line while parents gathered near the same white stripe where 40 children had refused to board bus 27. Preston Vale arrived in a dark overcoat and shook hands before stepping to the microphone. Marcus came through the side gate in his navy coveralls, carrying his metal toolbox in one hand and a thin document envelope in the other. He looked tired. There was oil beneath one thumbnail, and the cuff of his faded military jacket had been stitched where Nia had repaired it with uneven blue thread. He did not enter like a man expecting victory. He entered because the buses were scheduled to run again. Claire stood near Eli among the parents, still wearing the gray coat that hid her district badge. She had ordered the records preserved, but she did not step forward. Not yet. She wanted Preston's explanation on camera before he knew who was listening. "Yesterday's disruption was unfortunate," Preston began. "A private contractor created unnecessary concern over a minor maintenance issue. No child was harmed, and our company followed all established procedures." His voice was warm and measured. He thanked the drivers, praised the parents for their patience, and described Marcus as a grieving father whose personal history may have affected his judgment. Several cameras turned toward Marcus. Nia stood beside her teacher and reached for her father's hand. Marcus let her hold 2 of his fingers without looking away from Preston. Then Preston produced a district vendor policy showing Marcus's garage was not on the pre-approved emergency list. "Mr. Reed had no purchase order," he said. "No formal authority. The unfortunate reality is that he performed work the company could not legally authorize." For a moment, the explanation seemed complete. A reporter lowered her pen. One parent whispered that rules were rules. Even Claire's expression remained unreadable, because the policy itself was real. Marcus walked to a folding table beneath the banner and placed the denied invoice on it. The red stamp faced the cameras. Beside it, he laid the settlement agreement and a printed copy of the gate log. "This is the bill they said no one approved," he said. "This is the paper offering to pay me if I said the danger was a misunderstanding. And this is the gate record showing their inspection happened 15 minutes before anyone entered the yard. Preston smiled as though Marcus had proved his point. A settlement offer is not an admission. It is how responsible companies prevent unnecessary litigation. And electronic gate records can contain errors. Then why does your settlement name the rear exit condition? Marcus asked. The question was quiet enough that the microphones barely caught it, but the yard heard. Preston's eyes moved to the agreement. Standard legal language. Marcus opened the denied invoice and turned it over. Under the pale morning light, the carbon impressions pressed into the back became visible. Bus 27, 11:43 p.m. Emergency repair approved. Standard language doesn't leave a copy, Marcus said. Paper does. Dale Mercer stepped forward before Preston could answer. That impression could have come from any work order in his garage. Marcus set the invoice beneath his red inspection light. The angled beam made Dale's signature grooves rise from the paper like faint handwriting underwater. Nia remained beside her teacher. When a reporter asked whether her father had told the children not to board, she shook her head. He never told us that. We saw the door didn't have his orange mark. Marcus immediately moved between the microphones and his daughter. The children don't carry this, he said. Adults signed the papers. Preston seized the moment. Exactly. A child recognized a private paint mark and became frightened. That is not evidence of misconduct. For several seconds, it appeared he had regained control. Then Claire asked from the parent line, "Who received the carbon copy?" Dale answered too fast. "Linda did." Silence moved across the yard. Preston turned toward him. Dale's face drained as he realized what he had admitted. I mean, if a duplicate existed, accounting would have handled it. Claire stepped under the rope and approached the table. You said no duplicate ever existed. I was speaking generally. No, Marcus said, his voice level. You were speaking before you knew Linda kept it. Preston's professional expression finally slipped. His eyes went to the security camera above the dispatch door, then to Claire. This gathering is over, he said. Any further questions will be handled privately. Claire removed her phone and placed it beside the invoice. On its screen was Linda's message and a photograph of the carbon copy bearing Preston's blue ink note. Hold payment until renewal vote. Reporters surged closer, but Claire raised one hand. No one touches the table. Preston stared at her. You have no authority to issue instructions here. Claire reached inside her gray coat and drew out the Eastbrook badge she had kept hidden since the first cough inside bus 27. She clipped it where every camera could see her name and title, then looked directly at Preston. Dr. Claire Whitmore, acting superintendent of Eastbrook Schools, she said. And in 10 minutes the original invoice, the preserved camera footage, and the full fleet record are going on the auditorium screen. The original carbon copy appeared first on the auditorium screen, enlarged until every crease and ink stroke could be seen from the back row. Dale Mercer's signature sat beneath the words emergency repair approved. Above it, in Preston Vale's blue handwriting, were 5 words no one could explain away. Hold payment until renewal vote. The projector fan hummed over the silence. Preston's attorney rose slowly. A handwritten note does not establish intent. Claire Whitmore did not look at him. Then we will establish the timeline. She advanced the presentation. The inspection forms claimed bus 27 and bus 31 had both passed at 5:42 a.m. The electronic gate log showed the yard remained locked until 5:57. Preserved security footage showed Dale entering after the gate opened, carrying blank inspection sheets beneath his arm. A second clip showed Marcus arriving hours earlier in his service truck, unloading replacement latches and his red inspection light after the emergency call. The screen changed again. Marcus's garage receipt listed the parts he had purchased. His phone log confirmed the call from Vale Student Transit at 11:43 p.m. The denied invoice matched the VIN on bus 27. The settlement agreement used the same VIN while referring to the identified rear exit condition the company had publicly claimed did not exist. Preston's pen slipped from his fingers and struck the table with a small plastic click. No one bent to retrieve it. Claire played the evacuation test footage. Dale pulled the emergency handle. The door opened 3 inches and stopped. The bent latch fell to the floor, its edge coated in black grease, the broken orange paint visible beneath it. Then the independent inspector's report appeared beside the image. Rear exit likely to jam under impact load, 6 restraint latches below required strength, exhaust intrusion detected near the final passenger rows. Eli lowered his eyes. Claire placed a hand over his shoulder without pulling him into the center of the room. Nia stood beside Marcus, holding 2 of his fingers just as she had at the bus yard. The children were not instructed to refuse transportation, Claire said. They observed that the vehicle lacked the safety mark associated with the only mechanic they had seen conduct a full inspection. Preston cleared his throat. His voice came out dry. I cannot personally supervise every operational decision made by lower-level employees. Claire looked toward Linda Price. Linda rose with a sealed evidence folder pressed against her chest. Her hands trembled, but her words did not. She confirmed that Preston had ordered the invoice reclassified after reading Marcus's safety notes. She also produced emails directing accounting staff not to create additional maintenance history before the district's 5-year renewal vote. 3 other vendors had been marked unauthorized after reporting brake, steering, or exit door concerns. 2 driver complaints had been removed from the final district packet. This was no longer a disagreement over one unpaid bill. It was a pattern. Preston turned toward Dale, but Dale would not meet his eyes. Claire displayed the final email. It came from Preston's own account. Keep the fleet moving until the vote. We cannot afford another documented failure. The room seemed to contract around the glowing screen. A chair leg scraped once near the back, then stopped. Someone's phone vibrated against a wooden armrest, loud in the stillness. Even the air conditioning vents sounded suddenly harsh. Claire faced Preston. You did not merely refuse to pay a mechanic. You attempted to erase the name of the man who stopped 40 children from boarding a vehicle your company knew had not been cleared. Preston opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus did not smile. He did not look at the reporters or at the cameras turning toward him. He placed the bent latch on the evidence table, rested one grease-darkened hand over the folded invoice, and said, "The truth was in the door before it was in this room." The Eastbrook Board voted to suspend Vail Student Transit's contract immediately, ground the affected fleet, order independent inspections, refer the altered records for investigation, and restore Marcus's invoice as an authorized emergency repair with late fees. Dale was suspended pending review. Preston was removed from operational authority over the district contract. Linda remained accountable for her role but received formal protection for preserving evidence and cooperating. The board also stated publicly that Marcus had not manipulated the children and that their refusal to board had prevented a potentially dangerous trip. Nia finally released the breath she had been holding. She looked up at her father and whispered, "They said your name right." Marcus squeezed her hand, but his eyes stayed on the policy packet waiting at the end of the table. The board was prepared to offer him money, authority, and a new position. But now that the truth had finally given him a voice, what would he demand before trusting the same system with another family's child? The auditorium emptied without applause. Reporters gathered their cameras, parents led children into the hallway, and the Eastbrook Board remained behind to sign the suspension orders that would ground every affected bus before sunrise. Preston Vail left through a side door with his attorney. Dale Mercer surrendered his access badge to district security. Linda Price stayed at the evidence table, answering questions beneath the white light of the projector she had once hoped would never display her name. Marcus did not watch any of them leave. He stood beside Nia while a board clerk corrected the official record line by line. Marcus Reed had been authorized to perform an emergency repair. His warnings had been accurate. The 40 students had not been manipulated. Bus 27 had been removed from service because of verified safety failures. The clerk struck the words unauthorized vendor from the report and entered Marcus's full name in their place. Nia watched the cursor move across the screen. "Does that mean they can't say you made it up anymore?" she asked. Marcus looked down at her. "It means the paper finally says what happened." Claire approached after Eli had gone home with a district aide. She no longer wore her badge inside her coat. It rested openly against the gray fabric, but she did not use it to command the moment. The board wants to pay the invoice, the late fees, and the cost of every part you supplied, she said. They also want you to lead a new independent fleet inspection office. Marcus glanced at the policy packet beside her. Who can stop a bus? Claire understood the question. Under the current draft, the transportation director. That isn't enough. He opened the packet and placed one grease-darkened finger on the blank section beneath emergency authority. A driver who hears a brake problem should be able to stop it. A mechanic who finds a failed door should be able to stop it. A parent who reports exhaust shouldn't have to know someone important. Claire set her pen on the table. What else? Marcus asked for direct payment protections for emergency vendors, independent reinspection after serious defects, preservation of maintenance records, and written protection for drivers, mechanics, accountants, or parents who reported safety concerns. He did not ask for Preston to be humiliated. He did not ask for Dale to lose everything. He asked for consequences to follow evidence and for no employee to control both the repair approval and the final safety certification. Claire listened without interrupting. You're asking us to make it harder to ignore the next person, she said. That's the point. 3 weeks later, Eastbrook reopened the bus yard under temporary district control. Every vehicle carried an independent inspection seal. Drivers received written stop work authority. The original complaints removed from the district packet were restored, and the vendors who had been branded unauthorized received formal notices clearing their records. Linda entered a cooperation agreement that required her to testify and help build a payment system no executive could quietly override. Accountability remained, but so did a narrow second chance to repair what she had helped damage. At Marcus's garage, the overdue rent envelope disappeared from the glove compartment, but no new luxury car replaced his old service truck. He used part of the payment to replace the leaking roof and turn the back work bay into a Saturday training space for single parents and teenagers who needed practical skills. On the first morning, he placed the bent latch, the nearly empty orange marker, and the denied invoice inside a plain wooden frame. The paper was still wrinkled. The oil stain remained along one corner. Marcus refused to flatten it completely. Why keep the red stamp? Nia asked. Because the truth was there before they approved it, he said. Claire began bringing Eli to the garage on Saturdays. Sometimes she carried coffee. Sometimes she brought policy drafts covered in handwritten questions. She never offered to buy the garage or solve Marcus's life for him. She asked what support would make the program independent of her office, and she listened when he answered. One evening, after the students had gone, she told Marcus that her late husband had once reported a safety violation and been dismissed as difficult. Marcus did not tell her their wounds were the same. He simply pulled out a chair, and they sat beneath the fluorescent lights until the building grew quiet. Trust came slowly, through shared records, repaired tools, school pickup schedules, and the relief of not having to prove every silence. On the first day Bus 27 returned to service, Marcus checked the rear door once more. The new latch opened cleanly. 6 replacement restraints clicked into place. A fresh orange line crossed the inspection point. Nia climbed the steps, then turned back. Marcus knelt and retied the loose lace on her sneaker, the same metal toolbox resting beside his knee that had once served as Eli's seat when no one else noticed he could not breathe. Claire stood with the parents. No cameras were present. No one made a speech. Nia hugged her father, boarded the bus, and took her seat beside the window. Marcus tapped the yellow body twice with his knuckles. The driver closed the door, and 40 children rolled toward school on a bus that had finally earned their trust. For a moment, everyone remained still, listening to the engine fade into the morning, understanding that dignity had never needed to shout. It had only needed someone brave enough to protect the truth until justice could hear it.